I was fixing a faucet on the yacht when my son-in-law dismissively remarked that plumbers didn't belong there. He mocked me, seeing me as nothing more than a poor old retiree who rented a boat to pretend he was wealthy. But when I met his gaze and told him that the yacht was actually mine, his reaction was truly incredible. The look on their faces was priceless, and you wouldn't believe what happened next. Polished brass fittings on the deck of the yacht, the Serenity, glinted in the afternoon sun like scattered gold coins. I stood at the railing, my hands clasped behind my back, watching my family as they approached the gangway. The marina in Newport stretched before us, a thick forest of masts swaying softly in the gentle May breeze. My heart was pounding against my ribs. 2 months of careful planning had led to this exact moment. My son-in-law, Kevin, was the first one to step onto the yacht, his fancy loafers clicking on the teak deck. His eyes scanned the entire length of the boat, taking in every detail, the gleaming chrome, the plush leather seating under the canopy, and the sophisticated navigation equipment sparkling inside the pilothouse. For a split second, his jaw dropped in disbelief before his familiar smirk returned. He ran his manicured hand along the supple leather of the main seating area, wondering out loud how I could possibly afford this floating palace. The way he said my name, Robert, hit me like a physical blow. He didn't call me Dad, or even Ron, just Robert, with a tone that made my name sound like an insult. My daughter, Jessica, followed him aboard, clutching her designer handbag tightly against her chest. She looked around nervously, her cheeks flushing a pale pink. She asked me to promise that I hadn't used my entire retirement savings on the boat, and her voice held a note of worried embarrassment that I had grown to dread. Bill and Sarah, Kevin's parents, stepped onto the deck and their eyes widened. Sarah commented gently that the yacht was beautiful, and Bill nodded in agreement, expressing his thanks for the invitation. Kevin was already exploring. He was running his fingers across the control panel as if he owned the boat, noting that the navigation system alone cost more than most people earn in a year. He laughed without any humor and asked me what I could possibly have been thinking, trying to act like a yacht club member at my age. My chest tightened with frustration. I had practiced this moment many times, imagining how happy Jessica would be when I revealed the surprise. Instead, I watched her nervously fidget with her purse, refusing to meet my eyes. I managed to say that I had simply thought it would be a nice opportunity for the family to spend some time together, keeping my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. He responded with a cutting question, asking what we would spend time together on, calling the boat my midlife crisis. He opened a storage compartment, looking inside as if he were taking inventory. Kevin told me that he understood I wanted to feel successful, but that this was just embarrassing, and he wanted to know how much debt I had taken on for this fantasy. Jessica lightly touched his arm, trying to intervene, but he dismissed her, claiming my actions were concerning. He then turned to face me with his arms crossed, insisting that I had clearly made some questionable financial decisions. He said we should have a family meeting about managing my assets before I lost everything. His words hung in the salt air like a cloud of poison, as if I were some senile fool who had accidentally stumbled into a yacht dealership with a credit card. I calmly stated that the rental company had assured me everything was in order, a lie that tasted bitter but was necessary for the moment. Kevin's eyebrows shot up. He said that renting was slightly less crazy, but still ridiculous for someone living on Social Security. My hands clenched behind my back. I had built 3 companies from scratch, sold them for amounts he couldn't even imagine, and invested my money wisely for decades. But I wore khakis and polo shirts, drove a modest sedan, and lived in the same small house, so Kevin assumed I was poor. Needing a moment to breathe, I suggested that they all go and explore the lower deck, and I would prepare some refreshments. Kevin urged Jessica to come on and see how much I had spent on my little boat adventure. They disappeared below, and I could hear his voice echoing up through the hatch, exclaiming over a marble countertop and saying that I had completely lost my mind. Jessica's nervous laughter followed. Bill quietly approached me, telling me that the craftsmanship was exceptional and the yacht was truly magnificent. I simply nodded, grateful for his kindness but barely hearing him. From below deck, I could hear Kevin opening and closing cabinets, his voice a non-stop stream of disbelief and derision. Each word felt like a needle under my skin. Sarah joined her husband below, and I remained on deck, gripping the brass railing until my knuckles were white. The gentle waves lapped against the hull, but all I could hear was Kevin's mocking laughter, followed by Jessica's voice saying that I must have spent a fortune on the rental and that it was so unlike me. It was hard to hear my own daughter talk about me as if I were a stranger who had suddenly become delusional. The sun felt too bright, and the breeze was too cold. I stared out at the harbor, watching other families enjoying their boats, and wondered if this had all been a terrible mistake. But no, I had planned this perfectly. They just didn't understand yet. I heard more laughter from below, and my jaw tightened like a vice. I saw the brass compass near the pilot house, its polished surface reflecting the afternoon light, and reached out to touch it gently. I was reminded of another day, another moment, when I had touched the same compass and felt nothing but pure joy. 2 months earlier, on March 22nd, I was standing in the showroom at Maritime Luxury Yachts, wearing my best navy suit. The salesman, a polished young man named Trevor, was going over the specifications of the Serenity for the 3rd time that week. He explained that the master cabin had a queen bed and a full bathroom, and that the guest cabin had twin bunks that could convert to a double, which was perfect for family trips. I nodded, picturing the looks on Kevin and Jessica's faces when they discovered their own private quarters. The yacht stretched for 42 feet, every inch of its pristine fiberglass and chrome gleaming under the showroom lights. I ran my hand along that same brass compass, thinking about how I could teach my future grandchildren to navigate by the stars. I asked Trevor about the financing terms, even though I had already made up my mind. The check for $2.8 million was folded in my jacket pocket, drawn from an account Kevin couldn't even imagine existed. Trevor smiled, assuring me that with full payment today, I would receive the yacht immediately after the safety inspection and registration. He said my family would love the surprise. I had been planning this moment since Jessica's birthday the month before, when she had mentioned missing our old fishing trips. She had said she wished we could just escape on a boat somewhere, looking tired from Kevin's constant complaints about their finances. Here was the perfect solution, a floating sanctuary where we could rebuild our relationship, away from Kevin's endless need to belittle everyone around him. I had even researched family-friendly routes along the New England coast, imagining weekends where Jessica could rediscover her love for the water. I told Trevor that I would like to add some personal touches, like family photos in the main cabin and a sound system for music during dinners. He said that they could coordinate with their interior design team. I signed the papers with a steady hand, my excitement growing with each signature. This was more than just a purchase, it was an investment in healing. The money had come from my beloved Margaret's life insurance, funds I had been saving for something meaningful. What could be more meaningful than bringing my daughter back? Trevor handed me the keys, 2 small pieces of metal that represented months of careful planning. I told him that I wouldn't be taking possession of the yacht until the following month, as I wanted to surprise them by first presenting it as a rental, and then revealing the truth during our trip. The strategy had seemed brilliant. I would let them enjoy the yacht without the pressure of knowing its true cost, and then reveal the gift when they were already in love with it. I had imagined Jessica's tears of joy, her gratitude, and perhaps even Kevin's grudging respect. Standing in the showroom and holding those keys, I felt more hopeful than I had in years. My modest lifestyle had served its purpose, everyone underestimated my resources, and the surprise would be complete. Trevor had said that my daughter would be so proud, and I had imagined that, too. The memory dissolved like morning mist, and I opened my eyes. The harbor stretched before me, unchanged, but everything felt different now. Below deck, I could still hear Kevin's voice, though the words were muffled by distance and deck planking. Footsteps approached on the teak deck behind me. I straightened my shoulders, feeling a shift inside my chest. The hope that had carried me for 2 months was now hardening into something colder. The generous father who had signed those papers in March was learning a valuable lesson about the nature of gratitude. I turned as my family emerged from below deck. Kevin's face was flushed with what I now recognized as contemptuous amusement. The brass compass caught the light again, but this time it reminded me that navigation required me to know exactly where I stood before plotting my course. Bill's voice held a genuine appreciation as he came up from the stairs. He told me that the craftsmanship was exceptional and that I had chosen something truly special. His words were like cool water on a burn. I straightened slightly, releasing my death grip on the brass railing. Sarah followed behind him, her silver hair catching the afternoon light, her eyes bright with sincere admiration. She said that the woodwork below was stunning, and that the mahogany dining table was of museum quality. Kevin snorted, stepping up behind his parents with Jessica close beside him. He said that when you're spending someone else's money on a rental, you might as well go big, and he gestured at the yacht's gleaming surfaces. He claimed that I had probably spent more on this weekend than he made in 6 months. The comparison felt like a physical blow. Bill stiffened almost imperceptibly, and Sarah's smile faltered for just a moment. Jessica let out that nervous laugh I had grown to dread, the sound sharp against the gentle lapping of the waves. Bill quietly tried to stop his son, but Kevin was already moving past them, running his fingers along the chrome fittings as if he were appraising merchandise. He continued by saying to look at the top-of-the-line sound system and wondering how much it was costing me, guessing $2,000 or $3,000 for the weekend. My jaw clenched. $3,000 wouldn't even cover the monthly dock fees. Jessica told me that the yacht was beautiful, but her tone held that familiar note of worried embarrassment, and she suggested that maybe we could do something more practical next time, like miniature golf or a chain restaurant, something more appropriately modest for her father's presumed circumstances. I managed to suggest that we should all go below for lunch, keeping my voice steady despite the storm building inside my chest. I said I had prepared some refreshments. Kevin clapped his hands together mockingly, saying that we were living the dream, but that it was too bad it's just for a weekend. Bill's frown deepened as we moved toward the salon's entrance. I led the way down the steps into the main cabin, where the mahogany dining table gleamed under soft overhead lighting. The setting was perfect, with bone china, crystal glasses, and silver utensils arranged with careful precision, just as I had planned to make this moment special. Sarah gasped, taking in the elegant table setting. She told me that it was lovely and that I had gone to so much trouble. I replied that it was no trouble at all and pulled out chairs for the ladies. Sarah sat gracefully while Jessica perched nervously on the edge of her seat. Kevin remained standing, examining the built-in bar with obvious covetousness. He noted that it was fully stocked with premium brands, lifting a bottle of aged scotch and checking the label. He said the bottle alone probably cost more than most people's car payments. Bill more firmly tried to stop him, but Kevin's grin was sharp as he said he was just appreciating the finer things in life, saying that not everyone gets to play millionaire for a weekend. His words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah busied herself with her napkin while Bill studied his son with growing disapproval. Jessica's face flushed pink, caught between defending her husband and apologizing for him. I served the meal mechanically, grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a crisp white wine that cost more than Kevin could imagine. I placed each plate with careful precision while my mind churned with memories of the yacht showroom, of Trevor's encouraging words, and of my naive hope that this gift would bridge the growing chasm between my daughter and me. Bill offered that the meal was delicious, clearly trying to restore some civility to the gathering. Jessica softly said that her dad had always been a good cook. Kevin responded that with nothing else to do all day, I must have had plenty of time to learn, and his voice trailed off meaningfully as he cut his salmon. He said that retirement must be nice, with no responsibilities and no pressure to provide for anyone. The fork trembled slightly in my hand. He claimed I had no pressure to provide, but I had been providing for 3 decades, building companies from nothing and creating wealth beyond his comprehension. Now I was offering my greatest treasure, this floating sanctuary purchased with my beloved Margaret's memory, and receiving nothing but contempt in return. Bill's voice carried a warning as he tried to intervene. Kevin looked up from his plate, his eyes bright with challenge, asking what he was doing wrong. He said that he was just making conversation, and asked if that wasn't what family dinners were about. The silence stretched taut as a piano wire. Sarah reached for her wine glass with slightly shaking fingers. Jessica stared at her food as if it might provide an escape. Bill's jaw worked silently, a father watching his son reveal himself as someone he no longer recognized. And I sat at the head of my $2.8 million table, serving my ungrateful family a meal they would never appreciate, feeling something cold and calculating crystallize in my chest where warmth used to live. Kevin raised his glass in a mock toast to family adventures we can't afford. The clink of his glass against the table marked the end of civilized pretense. Bill set down his fork with deliberate precision, the sound sharp in the sudden quiet. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. My voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. I told him to stop his behavior immediately. Kevin's eyebrows shot up in theatrical surprise. He told me that he was just being honest about the situation, saying that someone in the family should acknowledge reality. I said that the reality was that he was a guest on the yacht and that he would show appropriate respect or he would leave, each word measured and controlled. Jessica's intake of breath was audible, she had never heard me speak to Kevin with such firmness. Neither had Kevin, judging by the way his smirk faltered for a fraction of a second before returning to full force. He laughed, though it sounded forced now, asking if I was serious. He asked if he couldn't express concern about my financial decisions because we were family. I replied that his concern sounded remarkably like mockery. Bill cleared his throat uncomfortably, suggesting that maybe they should pretend I wasn't making questionable choices, and Kevin's voice rose slightly as his composure cracked. He gestured around the elegant cabin and said that the rental fees alone could probably fund my groceries for months. The calculation in his eyes was naked now, measuring the cost against my perceived worth, finding me desperately wanting. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, the picture of smug superiority. He continued by saying that he had built a successful IT consulting firm from nothing and that he understood money and value. He waved dismissively at the crystal and china, saying that this was someone trying to play in a league where he didn't belong. Sarah's face had gone pale. Bill's knuckles were white where he gripped his napkin. Even they could see that their son had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But Jessica, my own daughter, nodded slightly, a tiny motion barely perceptible, but I caught it. She agreed with him. After everything I had sacrificed and everything I had given, she saw me through his eyes, a pathetic old man pretending to have wealth he didn't possess. The betrayal hit harder than any of Kevin's insults. I said that I thought he should excuse himself from the table, my voice deadly quiet. Kevin's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, and said that maybe he would. The air felt a bit stifling in there anyway. He moved toward the stairs leading to the deck, pausing at the threshold. He told me not to worry about cleaning up, as he was sure the rental company had people for that, and he didn't want me to strain myself. His footsteps echoed on the deck above us, deliberately heavy, claiming space that wasn't his to claim. The salon fell silent, except for the gentle creaking of the yacht against its moorings. Bill spoke first, his voice thick with embarrassment, apologizing for what he said was completely unacceptable. Sarah added that it was inexcusable and that she didn't know what had gotten into him. Jessica said nothing, staring at her untouched salmon as if it held the secrets of the universe. When she finally looked up, her eyes were defensive. She quietly said that he was just protective of our family's finances and that they had been talking about buying a house, so money was tight. She gestured helplessly around the cabin and said it was hard to understand the priorities. My priority had been creating a memory, a gift, a bridge back to the daughter I was losing. Her priority was maintaining her husband's comfortable illusions about his superiority. I stood slowly, gathering plates with steady hands despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. I told them that I understood completely, but I understood more than she realized. I understood that my generous father's heart had been naive, that love wasn't enough to overcome contempt, and that respect couldn't be bought with gifts. I also understood that Kevin had just made the gravest mistake of his life. From above deck came the sound of cabinet doors opening and closing, Kevin exploring areas he had no business accessing, making himself at home on what he thought was someone else's yacht. The irony would have been amusing if it hadn't been so infuriating. I told them that I would just tidy up and that they should all enjoy the afternoon air on deck. As they filed out, leaving me alone with the ruins of my carefully planned meal, I allowed myself one moment of pure, crystalline rage. Then I began to plan. Kevin believed he was playing a game with someone beneath him, but he was about to discover just how wrong he was. I listened as his footsteps moved across the deck above, each step heavy with what sounded like wounded pride. My hands continued to stack the plates with mechanical precision, but my mind was racing. The look in his eyes as he stood from the table was one I'd seen countless times in boardrooms when men of lesser caliber realized they had been outmaneuvered. Jessica began to get up, thinking she should probably check on him, but her father-in-law, Bill, advised her to let him cool off. Bill's voice was heavy with paternal disappointment as he said that Kevin needed time to think about his behavior. Sarah reached across the table to touch my hand, and she told me how sorry she was. I knew that Kevin couldn't tolerate being corrected, especially in front of his parents. Men like him didn't accept boundaries, they pushed against them and found ways around them. Up on the deck, his footsteps stopped, and I heard the soft sound of a door opening and closing. I figured he was either in the guest bathroom or exploring areas he had no business being in. Jessica weakly offered that he was under a lot of pressure at work, since the consulting business was so competitive. But Bill's expression suggested he wasn't buying her excuses any more than I was, saying that pressure was no excuse for disrespecting a host. I listened carefully to the sounds coming from the deck. I heard water running briefly, cabinets opening and closing, and a soft scraping of something metallic. Kevin was definitely exploring, touching things, and claiming space as his own. There was something different about his exploration now, it felt purposeful rather than curious. There were more metallic sounds, and a faint grinding noise made me pause mid-motion with the crystal glasses in my hands. Jessica's voice seemed to come from far away as she asked if I was all right. I automatically replied that I was fine, setting the glasses down carefully. The grinding sound had stopped, replaced by the soft closing of a cabinet door. Kevin's footsteps resumed above us, moving back toward the main deck area. A few minutes later, Kevin appeared at the top of the stairs, looking perfectly composed. If anything, he seemed more relaxed than when he had left. He slid back into his seat with a slight smile, saying he was sorry and that he had just needed a moment to appreciate the craftsmanship, admitting that the boat was really impressive. The complete reversal in his tone immediately sent warning signals through my nervous system. Kevin didn't apologize or admit he was wrong, and he certainly didn't compliment things he'd been mocking only minutes earlier. Bill asked cautiously if he was feeling better, and Kevin replied that he was, looking remarkably pleased with himself. He said he was thinking he should help with the cleanup as it was the least he could do after everything. Jessica's face immediately brightened. She told him that was sweet, but I was studying Kevin's expression, noting the way his eyes avoided mine and the slight upturn at the corner of his mouth that suggested private satisfaction rather than genuine remorse. He continued, saying he could wash the dishes in the galley to get familiar with the boat systems, which might be helpful if we ran into any problems. The word problems hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Sarah said warmly that that was very thoughtful, and I couldn't help but agree. Kevin offering to help with household chores was about as likely as snow in August, but there he sat, the picture of reformed behavior, radiating false humility. I stood slowly, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. I suggested that we all move to the deck first and let the dishes wait. But Kevin's smile was bright, and he insisted on making up for his behavior earlier, saying he would wash the dishes. He was already moving toward the galley area, and I found myself following, drawn by a horrible certainty that I was about to discover exactly what those metallic sounds had been. From the galley, Kevin called cheerfully that everything was perfect, but the word dropped like a stone into still water. Jessica asked what was wrong and moved to join him. I was already moving past her, and a cold feeling settled in my stomach like a winter fog. Kevin stood at the galley sink, his hand frozen on the faucet handle as water streamed from the tap in an uncontrolled torrent. He tugged at the handle with theatrical effort, claiming it seemed to be stuck and wouldn't turn off properly, calling it one of those quirky old boat problems. But my eyes went to the base of the faucet, where the chrome finish showed fresh scratches, deep gouges that hadn't been there this morning when I had prepared coffee, marks that could only come from someone using excessive force or the wrong tool. I quietly asked him to move aside so I could take a look. The handle moved stiffly under my grip, and the internal mechanism ground in a way that spoke of damaged parts. This wasn't wear and tear or even aggressive use, it was deliberate destruction disguised as an accident. Kevin helpfully suggested it probably just needed some WD-40, saying that marine fixtures took a beating. I knelt to examine the base more closely, running my fingers along the gouged chrome. The scratches formed a pattern consistent with plier marks. Someone had gripped the faucet with considerable force, twisting until something gave way inside. Jessica asked with genuine concern if I could fix it. I stood slowly and told her that it was definitely broken because the internal valve mechanism had been damaged. Kevin nodded sympathetically, saying that rental equipment probably gets rough treatment from previous guests and that it was a good thing it happened now instead of in the middle of the night. The barely concealed satisfaction in his voice made my hands clench involuntarily. He was enjoying this, not just the inconvenience he had caused, but the opportunity to play the helpful, sympathetic family member while I dealt with the rental problems. Bill approached, examining the faucet with a businessman's eye for detail, saying that the damage looked almost deliberate. Kevin's smile never wavered, saying that salt air was murder on those fittings and that it had probably been corroding for months. But Bill was frowning now. His background as an engineer made him see what Kevin hoped to hide. Bill pointed out that the gouges looked like tool marks. Kevin quickly suggested that it could have been from previous repair attempts, saying that I knew how it was when someone tried to fix something themselves and made it worse. The lie came so smoothly, so naturally, that I almost admired its audacity. Kevin was betting that his word as family would carry more weight than evidence, that no one would seriously consider that he might deliberately sabotage his host's property. I finally said that I would need to check the boat's maintenance manual to see what the manufacturer recommended for that type of failure. What I actually needed was to check the security cameras I had installed last month, high-definition recordings that would show exactly what Kevin had done and when. Kevin offered to help look, saying he was pretty good with technical stuff. I replied with a forced smile that there was no need because I knew where everything was. He shrugged, looking like he was disappointed to not be helpful, saying he was just trying to pitch in. As my family moved back toward the deck, Kevin lingered for a moment, pretending to check that the water was fully turned off. But I caught him glancing around the galley with the satisfied air of someone admiring their own handiwork. He conversationally said that it was funny how those things happened, 1 minute everything was fine, and the next minute there was a repair bill. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. This was just the beginning. Kevin had discovered that he could damage my property with impunity, safe in the knowledge that his family connection protected him from suspicion. He was about to learn how wrong he could be. I waited until the others were settled on deck, their voices drifting down through the open hatches. Then I moved quietly toward the navigation station, where the security system controls were hidden behind an innocuous panel. Kevin wanted to play games. He had just challenged someone who had been playing at a professional level while he was still learning to tie his shoes. The navigation room was tucked behind the main cabin, a compact space lined with electronic equipment that most guests never saw. I slipped inside quietly, closing the door behind me with a soft click. The multiple monitors came to life at the touch of a button, their screens flooding the small space with blue-white light. 8 camera feeds displayed the yacht's interior and deck areas in crisp high definition. I had the system installed last month after reading about yacht thefts in the marina, a precaution that was about to pay dividends in ways I had never imagined. My fingers moved across the control panel with practiced efficiency, scrolling back to 3:50 p.m. The time stamp in the corner read 155023 when Kevin first appeared on camera 3, the one covering the guest bathroom and galley area. There he was, stepping into the frame with the same casual confidence he had displayed all afternoon. At first, his movements were perfectly normal, opening cabinet doors and examining the yacht's amenities with the entitled curiosity of someone who believed everything belonged to him. Then he approached the faucet. I leaned closer to the monitor, watching Kevin test the handle with gentle pressure. The faucet worked perfectly, water flowed smoothly when he turned it on, and stopped cleanly when he turned it off. He knew it worked, and he knew there was nothing wrong with it. What happened next made my blood run cold. Kevin glanced toward the door, confirming he was alone. Then he gripped the faucet handle with both hands and twisted it. It wasn't the gentle turn of normal use, but a violent wrenching motion that made the camera shake slightly from the transmitted vibration. The time stamp read 155241. He did it again, this time bracing his foot against the cabinet for leverage. I could see his face clearly now, the concentration as he applied maximum force, and a slight smile of satisfaction when something gave way inside the mechanism. He tested his handiwork, watching water stream uncontrollably from the broken fixture. It was perfect, exactly the kind of accident that would embarrass his host and prove his point about inferior rental equipment. But Kevin wasn't finished. Camera 4 caught him opening drawers and searching until he found a dish towel to wipe away any metal shavings from his forced entry. He even ran his finger along the base of the faucet, checking for evidence of his sabotage. The methodical cleanup told me everything I needed to know about Kevin's character. This wasn't an impulsive act, it was calculated vandalism designed to humiliate me in front of my family. At 155412, he stepped back to admire his work, that satisfied smirk spreading across his face like oil on water. He had found the perfect way to put the presumptuous old man in his place, to demonstrate that people like me couldn't really afford the finer things in life. I copied the relevant footage to a portable drive, my movements automatic, while my mind processed the full scope of Kevin's betrayal. This wasn't just about a broken faucet, it was about respect, boundaries, and the fundamental contract between a guest and a host. From the dining area, I heard Kevin's voice, full of artificial concern, as he hoped I wasn't having too much trouble with that boat problem, calling the old rentals tricky. He was already spinning the narrative, painting me as someone foolish enough to rent a yacht beyond my means, someone who should expect problems with equipment he couldn't afford to buy. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so infuriating. I ejected the drive and slipped it into my pocket. The weight of it felt surprisingly substantial for something so small. It was evidence, proof, the kind of documentation that turned accusations into facts. Kevin's voice drifted down from above, suggesting that maybe he should go check on me and offer to help. The false concern in his tone made my jaw clench. He wanted to help, all right, he wanted to help himself to a front row seat for my humiliation when I couldn't fix the problem he had created. I powered down the monitors and stood in the darkness for a moment, listening to the gentle sound of water lapping against the hull. 40 years of business had taught me that evidence without strategy was worthless. Kevin had given me the ammunition, but I needed to choose my moment carefully. The sound of footsteps above told me my time for planning was running short. I moved quietly to the yacht's tool locker, selecting a precision wrench set and pipe sealant from the well-organized compartments. My hands worked automatically, gathering what I needed while my mind churned through years of memories. The damaged faucet could be repaired. Marine-grade fixtures were built to withstand far worse than Kevin's tantrum. But as I knelt beside the broken mechanism, images flooded back of all the times I had fixed things for Kevin and Jessica, all the problems I had solved with my checkbook and my patience. I remembered Jessica's graduate school tuition, $40,000 over 2 years. I had written those checks gladly, proud of my daughter's ambition to earn her MBA. Back then, Kevin had been grateful, or at least he had performed gratitude convincingly. He had called me incredible, using the formal address that now seemed less like respect and more like distance. I also remembered their wedding, a $25,000 contribution. The memory stung fresh as I worked the wrench around the faucet's base. I had insisted on paying for the flowers, the photographer, and the upgraded reception venue. Every father wants his daughter's wedding to be perfect. That night, I had told a picture of Margaret that I wished she could have been there to see Jessica in her dress. Then there was the down payment on their house, $60,000, just 2 years ago when Kevin's business was experiencing a temporary cash flow issue. He had sat in my modest kitchen, explaining how a larger down payment would secure better financing terms. His humility had seemed genuine, and his gratitude effusive. He told me that it meant everything to them and that I would never regret helping them build their future. The broken fixture came apart in my hands, revealing the deliberate damage Kevin had inflicted, twisted metal where smooth curves should have been, and forced threads that would never turn properly again, just like the relationship between us, I suppose. I also recalled emergency car repairs for $5,000, Jessica's medical bills for $3,200, the new refrigerator they needed when theirs died, and all the Christmas gifts, birthday surprises, and anniversary dinners I had insisted on paying for. The list went on and on, a decade of generosity that had apparently purchased nothing but contempt. Each act of kindness had been met with Kevin's practiced appreciation and his assurances that he would never forget my support. Yet here I was, kneeling on the floor of my own yacht, repairing damage he had inflicted out of spite. From above, Kevin's voice was louder now, as he suggested that they should go check on me since I had been down there for a while. Jessica's muffled but concerned response suggested that maybe the repair was more complicated than I had thought. More complicated? Everything was more complicated than it seemed, the yacht they thought was rented, the wealth they assumed I didn't possess, and the man they believed was beneath their consideration. I threaded new gaskets into place, my movements precise, despite the anger coursing through my veins. This wasn't just about money, though the financial aspect was staggering when I tallied it all, nearly $140,000 in direct assistance over the years, not counting the smaller gestures like dinners and gifts. It was about respect, about the fundamental expectation that kindness would be met with kindness, and that generosity would breed gratitude rather than entitlement. Kevin's footsteps approached the stairs as he said that he was going to see if I needed a hand. The faucet mechanism slid back into place with a satisfying click, and water flowed smoothly when I tested it. It was better than before, actually. Sometimes damage forced you to rebuild stronger. Kevin's voice carried that false note of helpful concern as he asked if everything was okay down there. I stood slowly, wiping my hands on a clean rag while calculating my next move. Kevin thought he had won some small victory by breaking my property. He had no idea that he had just triggered a war he was spectacularly unprepared to fight. The man approaching to offer his help had never built a business from nothing, never negotiated million-dollar deals, and never outmaneuvered competitors who tried to destroy him. He had never learned that in a real conflict, the person who controls the information controls the outcome. Kevin was about to receive an education in exactly what kind of man he had chosen to cross. As I stepped up from the lower deck, Kevin's voice carried across the dining area with theatrical relief as he announced that I was here and that they were starting to worry. He asked how the repair went. He was leaning back in his chair, his arms crossed in satisfaction, wearing the same smug expression he had worn when he first stepped aboard, the picture of a concerned family member soliciting sympathy for poor Robert's boat troubles. With mock sympathy, he continued, asking if the old equipment was giving me fits and saying he was just telling everyone how those rental companies cut corners on maintenance and probably hadn't serviced that faucet in years. I set my tablet on the dining table with deliberate precision, watching Kevin's face as I pulled out a chair. I told him that I would actually like to ask him something specific about that faucet. His eyebrows shot up in theatrical innocence, and he said that he was no plumber but had noticed that the fixture looked pretty corroded when he had washed his hands earlier. Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Jessica said that Kevin was just trying to help and that he had mentioned the water pressure seemed off. I kept my voice level, my eyes fixed on Kevin's face, saying that I was curious about exactly what happened when he was down there. Kevin's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes, a split second of calculation before the performance resumed. He replied that he had just used the facilities and noticed that the faucet was acting up but figured I would want to handle it myself. Bill cleared his throat uncomfortably, suggesting that perhaps we should focus on getting a repair technician. I quietly interrupted Kevin and asked him why he had deliberately broken the faucet. The words dropped into the conversation like stones into still water. Kevin's laugh was a beat too late, a fraction too loud. He asked what I was talking about and said that he didn't break anything. Jessica's voice carried a warning edge, saying that it was a serious accusation. I interrupted Derek's theatrical disbelief and told him I had some footage that might interest everyone. His confidence faltered for a moment, a flicker of concern before the mask of arrogance snapped back into place. Footage? What footage? He scoffed, trying to sound nonchalant. The yacht has a security system, I said calmly, watching the color drain from his face. 8 cameras, high definition with audio. Very thorough coverage. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Derek's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, but his voice remained steady. Well, then you'll see exactly what I told you. I used the bathroom, noticed a problem with the faucet, and came back up. We'll see, I agreed, opening the video application on my tablet. Let's all take a look together. Sarah leaned forward anxiously. Ronald, surely this is unnecessary. No, William said firmly, his instincts recognizing the gravity of the situation. Let's see what the cameras show. I touched the screen, scrolling to the timestamp. 15 hours 50 minutes and 23 seconds, there you are, I said conversationally, as Derek appeared on camera, stepping into the guest head. Saturday, May 17th, at 3:50 p.m. Just after you left our table. So you can see I'm just using the facilities, Derek said defiantly, watching his on-screen self approach the faucet and test it. The video showed it working perfectly, water flowing smoothly, stopping cleanly. Interesting, I observed. The faucet seems to be functioning normally. Lindsay leaned closer, her brow furrowed. I don't understand what we're supposed to be seeing. Keep watching, I suggested, my finger hovering over the play button. The interesting part is coming up. Derek shifted in his seat, his confidence cracking. This is ridiculous. You're making a mountain out of a molehill over a simple plumbing problem. But his eyes never left the screen, and I could see the moment he remembered what was about to happen, what the cameras had captured, what his arrogance had made him forget. The timestamp shows 15:52, I continued, my voice perfectly calm. Watch carefully. On the tablet screen, Derek glanced toward the door, confirming he was alone. Then his whole demeanor changed. Gone was any pretense of normal use. This was deliberate, calculated destruction. Oh my God, Sarah whispered as we watched Derek grip the faucet with both hands and wrench it violently to the side. The audio was a sickening symphony of grinding metal and a sharp crack as the mechanism gave way. Derek's satisfied grunt was audible as he felt the fixture break beneath his hands. Derek. William's voice cracked. What the hell are you doing? On screen, Derek wasn't finished. He braced his foot against the cabinet, applying even more force until the internal valve snapped completely. Water streamed uncontrollably from the broken fixture. Lindsay's hand flew to her mouth. I don't. This can't be. But there was no denying what we were all seeing. Derek stepped back from his handiwork with unmistakable satisfaction, that same smug smile on his face as when he had returned to the table. He even ran his finger along the base of the faucet, checking for evidence of his sabotage. The timestamp shows 15:54, I said quietly. You spent 4 minutes deliberately destroying my property. Derek's face had gone chalk white. This is. There's an explanation. I was trying to fix it when it. Fix what? William's voice was deadly quiet. The footage clearly shows it working perfectly before you touched it. On screen, Derek was wiping away metal shavings with a dish towel, methodically cleaning up the evidence. His movements were careful, practiced, the actions of someone who knew exactly what they had done and wanted to hide it. You even brought a towel to clean up, I observed. Very thorough. Lindsay was staring at her husband in shock. Derek, how could you? This is Dad's rental. He'll have to pay for the damages. Derek's confident mask had completely crumbled. It's not what it looks like. I was trying to help and it broke and I panicked. You panicked? William leaned forward, his voice heavy with disappointment. Son, we just watched you deliberately destroy someone else's property. There's no accident here. No misunderstanding. Sarah was dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. Ronald, I'm so ashamed. I don't know what to say. Derek made one last desperate attempt at defense. The faucet was obviously defective. I barely touched it and it broke. These old boats have problems. Derek, I said, stopping the video and turning the tablet toward him. Would you like me to play it again? Perhaps in slow motion this time. We can count exactly how many times you wrenched the handle before it broke. The silence was deafening. Derek stared at the frozen image on the screen, himself caught in the act of sabotage, his face showing clear satisfaction at the damage he had caused. I think, William said slowly, his voice thick with disgust, we need to discuss this situation very seriously. Derek's last shred of bravado snapped. Fine. Yes, I broke the damn faucet, but can you blame me? Ronald's been acting like some kind of yacht club millionaire all day, throwing money around on rentals he can't afford, trying to make the rest of us feel small. The admission hung in the air like poison gas. Even Derek seemed shocked that he had finally said it out loud. Lindsay was staring at her husband as if she had never seen him before. You did this on purpose? To hurt my father? To teach him a lesson about living within his means? About not pretending to be something he's not, Derek shot back, his true nature finally emerging without disguise. The perfect opening. I closed the tablet and smiled for the first time all day. Well, Derek, I said quietly. Speaking of pretending to be something you're not, I think it's time we discussed exactly what you don't know about this situation. Derek's hands were shaking as he leaned forward in his chair. Look, Ronald, maybe I got a little carried away, but it's just a minor repair on a rental boat. These things happen. Just a minor repair. On a rental boat? The words hung in the air like the smell of sulfur after a lightning strike. You're absolutely right, I said quietly, watching his face carefully. This is about understanding what kind of person vandalizes someone else's property for sport. Vandalizes? Derek's voice cracked slightly. Come on, that's a strong word. I was frustrated. Maybe I used a little too much force, but let's keep this in perspective. We're talking about a weekend rental here. William shifted uncomfortably. Son, we all saw the video. There's no excuse for it. Dad, please. Derek's mask was slipping further with each word. I made a mistake, okay? But Ronald's acting like I burned down his house. It's a rented yacht. The insurance will cover it. Rich guys like the owner probably write this stuff off as business expenses anyway. Rich guys like the owner, I repeated, picking up my tablet and setting it aside with deliberate care. You keep mentioning that this is a rental. You seem very concerned about the financial implications for the owner. Well, yeah, Derek straightened slightly, sensing an opportunity to regain the moral high ground. I mean, you're obviously way over your budget here, Ronald. This whole yacht club fantasy, it's not sustainable. Someone like you trying to play millionaire for a weekend, it's just sad. Lindsay winced visibly. Derek, please don't. Someone like me, I repeated softly. Look, no offense, but let's be realistic. Derek was warming to his theme now, the familiar arrogance creeping back into his voice. You're a retired what? Plumber. Carpenter living on Social Security trying to impress us with boats you can't afford. It's embarrassing. Sarah gasped audibly. William's face had gone red with shame. But Derek wasn't finished. Guys like you don't belong on yachts like this. You belong in fishing boats. Maybe a pontoon if you save up. This, he gestured around the elegant cabin, is for people who actually earned it. The silence that followed was absolute. I stood slowly, my hands steady, my voice calm as morning mist. Derek, I said. This is my yacht. The words dropped like anvils into still water. Derek's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again without a sound. Lindsay's hand flew to her chest. William looked like he'd been struck by lightning. You're what? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. My yacht, I repeated clearly. I bought it in March for $2. 8 million cash. The color drained from Derek's face so quickly I thought he might faint. That's not possible. The Serenity is registered in my name with the Coast Guard. The marina has my credit card on file for monthly slip fees. The insurance policy lists me as the sole owner. I let each fact settle before continuing. I purchased it as a gift. Lindsay found her voice first. A gift for who? I looked directly at Derek, watching understanding dawn in his eyes like a sunrise over a cemetery. For you and your husband, I said simply. I was planning to surprise you today, present it as a rental first, and then reveal that it was yours to keep. The sound Lindsay made was somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Derek had gone completely white, his mouth working soundlessly. 2.8 million, William said slowly, his voice thick with dawning horror. Plus another $140,000 in direct financial support over the years, I added conversationally. Graduate school, the wedding, the house down payment, various emergencies. I kept careful records. Derek finally found his voice. I didn't. We had no idea. No, I agreed. You had no idea that the man you've been mocking all afternoon was planning to give you a yacht worth more than most people's houses. The irony settled over the cabin like fog. Derek had spent the day sabotaging and mocking the very man who had intended to make him a millionaire. Ronald, Sarah whispered, tears starting in her eyes. We're so sorry. But I was still looking at Derek, watching him process the full magnitude of what his arrogance had cost him. I corrected gently. I was planning to give you a yacht. Derek's face went through a spectrum of emotions, shock, disbelief, calculation, and finally, desperate panic. Wait, he said, lurching forward. You said, was planning. That doesn't mean. I mean, we can work this out now that I understand the situation. Now that you understand the situation, I repeated quietly. What exactly do you understand? That I made a terrible mistake. I had no idea this was your yacht, Ronald. If I'd known. If you'd known I owned it, you would have treated me with respect. I let the question hang in the air. But since you thought I was just some poor retiree playing above his station, disrespect was acceptable. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Beside him, Lindsay was staring at her hands, finally beginning to understand the choice she had made between her husband and her father. That's not what I meant, Derek stammered. The stress of work and seeing you spend so much on a rental when what? William interrupted, his voice sharp with disappointment. When you decided your father-in-law needed to be taught a lesson about his place. Sarah was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Derek, how could you do this? Ronald has been nothing but generous to this family. I know that now, Derek's voice cracked with desperation. But we can fix this, right? I'll pay for the faucet repair. Hell, I'll pay for a complete renovation of the galley. We can put this behind us. I walked to the yacht's large window, looking out at the peaceful harbor where other families were enjoying their boats without sabotage or disrespect clouding their afternoons. The faucet is already repaired, I said calmly. Took about 20 minutes. Marine fixtures are built tough. Then what's the problem? Derek's voice carried a note of desperate hope. No harm, no foul, right? I turned back to face him. The problem, Derek, is that you revealed exactly who you are. When you thought I was vulnerable, when you believed I was beneath you, you chose cruelty. That's not a faucet problem. That's a character problem. Lindsay finally looked up from her hands. Dad, I know Derek was wrong, but... But what, sweetheart? I asked gently. But I should overlook deliberate sabotage because he apologized after getting caught. But I should ignore years of subtle disrespect because he promises to do better now that he knows I have money. She had no answer for that. None of them did. The yacht remains mine, I continued. The gift offer is permanently withdrawn. Derek, I think it would be best if you and Lindsay gathered your things and left. You can't be serious, Derek protested. Over one stupid mistake. One stupid mistake. William's voice was incredulous. Son, you deliberately vandalized a man's property after he invited you aboard as a guest. You've spent the afternoon mocking and belittling him. Even now, you're more concerned about losing a gift you never knew existed than about the hurt you've caused. Derek looked around the table, seeking support that wasn't there. Even Lindsay couldn't meet his eyes. Fine, he said finally, standing abruptly. Come on, Lindsay. Let's get out of here. Lindsay stood slowly, looking torn between following her husband and staying with her father. Dad, You made your choice clear today, I said softly. I hope it was worth it. As Derek and Lindsay gathered their belongings and headed toward the gangway, William approached me. Ronald, I can't begin to express how ashamed I am of my son's behavior. If you'd prefer us to leave as well. Absolutely not, I said firmly. You and Sarah have shown nothing but respect and grace. Please stay. Let's enjoy the rest of this beautiful afternoon as it was meant to be enjoyed. Through the window, I watched Derek and Lindsay walking down the dock toward the parking area, Derek gesticulating angrily while Lindsay walked in silence. They looked small against the backdrop of the harbor, diminished by their own choices. Sarah joined William and me at the window. Do you think they'll be all right? Derek will land on his feet, I said. Men like him always do. As for Lindsay, I sighed, she'll have to decide whether she wants to build a life with someone who destroys bridges out of spite. William poured 3 glasses of wine. To character, he said simply. To character, Sarah and I echoed. As the sun moved lower toward the horizon, painting the water in shades of gold and amber, I felt a perfect peace. Justice had been served not through revenge, but through natural consequences. Derek had destroyed his own inheritance with his own hands, just as surely as he had destroyed that faucet. The brass compass caught the afternoon light one more time, pointing true north as always.